Welcome, chosen one. Listen carefully. The only thing more dangerous than a lie is the truth revealed too late. Let that idea sink in. Now, just imagine, discovering that the person you trusted the most constructed a betrayal so monstrous it made onlookers physically sick. And here's the plot twist. It wasn't just about stabbing you in the back. No, that would have been too simple. It was a betrayal slow-cooked, a gourmet dish marinated in deception, served with side of public humiliation. Here's a fact. Studies show that betrayal activates the same part of the brain as physical pain, which is why some felt they needed an ambulance and a lawyer at the same time. But in your case, chosen one, it wasn't a simple scratch on the soul. It was open-heart surgery performed by someone holding a rusty butter knife. Yet, you absorb it like a calm god, unshakable, like someone watching an amateur magician fumble a trick they had already seen backstage. That is what shocked people the most. Not just the horror of what was done, but the divine level of grace with which you navigated that ordeal. And believe me, your enemies were not ready for that kind of twist. First, you survived a level of treachery that would have turned most people into the very monster they were facing. Listen again. You survived a level of betrayal that would have pushed most to become the very monster they were fighting. This is not an exaggeration. It is the pure truth. There is a point where pain and betrayal become so profound that they begin to alter how a person thinks, speaks, and treats the world. Many never come back from that point. They get lost. They harden their hearts until no kindness can penetrate. They begin to speak with bitterness in every word. They carry suspicion. They protect themselves so much they cease to live. And in the worst cases, they decide the only way to survive is to play by the same dirty rules as those who hurt them. You did not do that. And that is what makes your story disturbing for some and inspiring for others. They watch you take hit after hit, thinking, this is it, this is the moment he will break. But you did not become cruel. You did not start plotting revenge like a twisted soap opera character. You did not absorb their poison just to win the fight. You remained human, and that is not normal when pain cuts that deep. What makes this even more significant is that the people around you knew how hard it was. They saw the humiliation, the loss, the sleepless nights you couldn't speak about, the way it drained you. They saw opportunities where you could have exploded, and no one would have blamed you. And yet, you did not. That kind of restraint disturbs people because it forces them to ask themselves if they could do the same. The truth is, most could not. They would have let that betrayal redefine them, reshape their personality, rewrite their values. But you did not let the darkness in someone else's soul dim the light in your own. And that is why your survival is not just about continuing to breathe. It is about remaining yourself. You didn't just come out alive. You came out whole. That is a level of victory most people will never know. For it is not about beating the other person. It is about refusing to lose yourself in the process. It is a kind of survival that leaves people in awe and your enemies furious that they cannot break you. Secondly, their betrayal was not just against you. It was against everyone who believed in humanity. Their betrayal was not just against you. It was against everyone who still believed that people are fundamentally good. When something that foul happens in the shadows, you can dismiss it as an isolated act, but when it plays out in plain sight, it does more than hurt the person at the center. It creates shockwaves that shake a community's entire sense of security, fairness, and justice. People who thought they understood loyalty suddenly start questioning it. Those who trusted their ability to read someone's character begin to doubt their judgment. It wasn't just your heart that cracked. The collective belief in decency took a hit. The reason this betrayal made people sick isn't just because it was cruel. It's because it was calculated. The kind of cold, deliberate planning behind it forces onlookers to confront the fact that evil is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes, it wears a smile for years before it strikes. That is a hard truth to swallow for people who have built their lives believing they could tell a friend from a foe. And that is where the damage goes further than most realize. You were not just a victim in their eyes. You were a symbol of something they thought was still safe in the world. Trust, love, friendship, whatever bond you had, seeing it violated so brazenly was like watching the last light in the room go out. It wasn't just what they did to you, it was the message it sent. No connection, no matter how solid it seems, is safe from betrayal. The worst part for many people was realizing how close they could have been to a similar fate. Seeing it happen made them replay every conversation, every promise made to them, wondering if their own circle had a traitor taking silent notes. You became, unwillingly, the proof that no one is untouchable. That is why it was bigger than you. Your pain was personal, but its impact was public. The betrayal forced people to see that darkness can stand right beside you, smiling, while planning your destruction. And although that truth is disturbing, it is also why your survival shook them. Because you showed that even in a world where this kind of treachery exists, it is still possible to come out standing, and to do it without becoming like those who hurt you. Thirdly, he was betting on the collapse of your mind, not just your life. He didn't just aim to make you fall. They wanted to dismantle you from the inside. Their goal wasn't just to end your opportunities, your reputation, or your stability. That would have been too easy. He wanted to see your sense of self fracture in public. He wanted you to lose track of who you were to the point of no longer recognizing yourself. This was an attack on your life in the physical sense. It was psychological warfare designed to erase you while leaving your body to wander. He was counting on the idea that enough humiliation, isolation, and stress would make you mentally crack. Once that happened, he could control the narrative. He could say you were unstable, self-destructive, and people would believe it because you would be too broken to defend yourself. That is how deep their strategy was. They weren't just trying to hurt you in the moment. He wanted to permanently alter your legacy. What makes this even more twisted is that he wanted it to look like your fault. The trap was to push you until you exploded so he could point at you and say, "Look, this is who he really is." He wanted to provoke you into becoming the very image he was painting of you behind your back. And if you had fallen into the trap, they would have had all the proof they needed to rewrite the truth in their favor. But here's the part he didn't see coming. You refused to follow their script. You did not give them the public collapse they were eagerly anticipating. You did not react in a way they could use against you. Instead, you held fast. Even if it meant suffering in silence longer than most people could endure, that choice deprived their plans of oxygen. The reason people are sick now is that they realize how close they were to seeing a human being erased in real time, and how intentional that attempt was. They aren't just disgusted by what happened. They are shaken by the method used. Surviving without collapsing didn't just save your mind. It shattered the entire illusion they tried to build. And that is why, even though he thought he was writing your ending, all he really did was give you a more powerful beginning. Fourthly, you were the last person they should have chosen for this kind of war. They truly believed they had chosen the perfect target, someone they could dismantle piece by piece until nothing was left but submission and defeat. They mistook your kindness for weakness, your patience for passivity, and your silence for submission. In their mind, you were easy prey. What they didn't realize is that you weren't relying on your own strength alone. You were connected to something far beyond what human malice could reach. Your endurance wasn't even in their calculations. They expected a short fight, a quick collapse, a neat ending where you would disappear quietly and he would emerge victorious. He had no plan for what he would do if you refused to fall. He had no backup strategy for someone who kept standing no matter how many blows he landed. The more they pushed, the more they exposed their own fragility. For every failed attempt to destroy you revealed how much they needed you to crack to validate themselves. Because you have weathered storms long before they even knew your name. You have endured losses, betrayals, and trials that would have crushed them instantly. What they brought wasn't new. It was just noise they thought would be the main event. The thing about operating on a higher frequency is that you process attacks differently. You don't take every wound as a reason to give up. You see it as confirmation that you carry something too precious not to be challenged. And that is what they accidentally revealed by targeting you. They showed how threatening your presence, your influence, and your resilience truly were. Now, they find themselves in the most uncomfortable position possible, locked in a war they started but cannot win. They lit a fire thinking it would consume you, but it only refined you. And instead of watching you disappear, they must now live with the reality that they have made you stronger, more focused, and more dangerous to their plans than ever. Fifthly, the way you handled this shifted the spotlight from the scandal to their character. They were convinced they were creating the perfect public spectacle, a scandal so damaging it would stick to your name forever. Every move he made was designed to drag you through mud while he remained at a safe distance, pretending not to be involved. In his mind, people would remember the story he had fabricated, not the truth. He thought the whispers would follow you forever, shaping how the world saw you. But the way you conducted yourself completely flipped the script in a way they never anticipated. You did not react as he had predicted. You did not spiral into desperate defense, frantic explanations, or emotional outbursts that they could use as evidence against you. You did not go on a public tirade or try to destroy them to save yourself. Instead, you moved forward with a level of calm that made everyone doubt what they had been told. That serenity became the crack in their narrative. And through that crack, the truth began to seep in. The more centered you remained, the more people started to watch them. They began to notice the inconsistencies in their behavior, the small slips in their stories, the strange satisfaction they seemed to derive from the chaos. What was meant to be a trial against you turned into an inquest into who they really were. Now, when the scandal is mentioned, it is no longer about what you were supposed to have done. It is about what they proved capable of doing. The story has completely changed. It is a character study on manipulation, cruelty, and how far someone will go to destroy another person. And the irony is that they built this spotlight themselves. They were so determined to put you in the light that they didn't realize they were walking right into it. The shame they tried to make you were never stuck because you refused to accept it. Instead, it settled right back where it belonged, on their conscience. And here's the part that burns them the most. The world is no longer talking about your fall. They are talking about their soul, their choices, and their inability to stand next to you without looking small. Sixthly, you show that strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it simply refuses to die. They had bet everything on a spectacle. They needed you to explode, to scream, to cry, to make a scene that would validate every lie they had told about you. In their mind, the only way to prove their version of events was to push you to react exactly as they wanted. But instead of giving them that moment, you did the one thing they were not prepared for. You stayed stable. You did not give them fireworks. You gave them a silence that cut deeper than any explosion. That restraint wasn't about pretending you weren't hurt. It wasn't about suppressing things or trying to appear strong for the sake of appearances. It was about knowing that not all battles are won by striking back wildly. Some are won by letting the enemy exhaust their ammunition while you remain standing. Your refusal to be drawn into the chaos deprived their betrayal of the oxygen it needed to burn bright. Without your emotional reaction to feed on, their entire plan began to suffocate. People mistake noise for strength, but there's a power in stillness that most never understand. It is the kind of strength that doesn't beg for recognition, that doesn't demand an audience, and that doesn't collapse when no one is applauding. You didn't need to announce your strength. You simply refused to die in the storm they sent your way. That refusal in itself became the strongest statement you could make. What destabilized them the most was realizing they had no control over you. They couldn't lure you into public depression, and they couldn't provoke you into self-destruction. Every time you chose not to react, you forced them to bear the weight of their own actions without any distraction to hide behind. The silence they thought would make you look weak became the mirror that showed everyone exactly who they were. In the end, your silent endurance didn't just protect you, it destroyed their strategy. They wanted chaos, but you gave them serenity. They wanted a spectacle, but you gave them nothing to watch except their own guilt. And that is the kind of strength that doesn't just survive betrayal. it transforms it into their loss. You didn't just lose people, you lost entire illusions about the world. The betrayal cost you more than relationships. It dismantled entire illusions you had about how the world works and who people really are. Before it happened, there were certain unspoken rules you believed everyone adhered to. Loyalty meant something. Promises had weight. Friendship had a line it would not cross. But when people you trusted crossed that line without hesitation, it wasn't just your heart that broke. It was a framework upon which you had built your understanding of humanity. What made this even heavier is that you weren't the only one affected. The people who witnessed it, whether directly involved or observing from afar, also felt a shift. It was as if a collective innocence was ripped away in real time. Suddenly, those who thought they could spot danger or deception learned that evil doesn't always look like a villain. Sometimes, it looks like a friend, a mentor, a family member. And that is a truth most people are not ready to face until it's forced upon them. Part of the sickness in the air came from this forced realization. It wasn't just what they did to you. It was what their actions revealed about what is possible when greed, envy, or malice take control of a human being. For many, it was the first time they realized that the people smiling at them from across the table could also be the ones planning their downfall. That kind of realization doesn't fade quickly. And here's the thing. Once those illusions are gone, they are gone for good. You can forgive, you can heal, but you cannot unsee what you have seen. That is why this betrayal changed the atmosphere. Not just for you, but for everyone who witnessed it. The moral safety people thought they had was shattered, and through that came a soberer truth. Trust is not something to be given blindly, and not everyone who claims to be by your side will be there when it counts. What you lost wasn't just people. It was a whole chapter of your worldview. And although that loss is painful, it is also what forced you and others to begin seeing the world as it truly is. This awareness may feel heavy, but it is the kind of weight that sharpens discernment and ensures no one will ever take you by surprise in the same way again. Seventhly, they turned your existence into a case study and failed miserably. They treated your life like an experiment, as if you were a project they could manipulate, break, and use as proof that no one could survive the pressure they were about to unleash. They wanted to make you a public example, a cautionary tale for anyone who dared to act with too much confidence, integrity, or light. In their mind, once they had humiliated you enough, you would collapse, and they could point to you as proof that no one is untouchable. But instead of confirming their theory, you shattered it. What they had planned as a study of destruction became a living, breathing example of the limits of human cruelty. They underestimated how deeply rooted your spirit was. And they overlooked the fact that some people are built with a foundation that does not crack under the weight of evil. It grows stronger. Every blow they struck did not produce the collapse they had predicted. It revealed a resilience that embarrassed them in front of everyone watching. The truth is, they weren't just attacking you. They were making a statement to everyone. If we can break this one, we can break anyone. And that is exactly why their failure stings so much. Instead of proving your weakness, they proved the durability of your will. Instead of discouraging others, they ended up inspiring them. What was meant to be your fall became the very thing that elevated your influence. Now, the case study they wanted to present to the world is being studied for a completely different reason. People aren't talking about how you were destroyed. They are talking about how you refused to bend. They talk about how you held fast without becoming bitter, how you survived their scheming without stooping to their level. Their biggest mistake was not attacking you. It was thinking you could be reduced to a victim in their narrative. You became proof that resilience has no ceiling, and that no amount of malice can outmatch a soul anchored in something unshakable. And now, the only lesson remaining from their experiment is that the weapon they try to use on you will never work on someone who refuses to surrender. Eighthly, you made forgiveness a weapon, not a weakness. You did not choose forgiveness because they deserved it. You chose it because you refused to let their poisons linger in your system. Carrying hatred, replaying every detail, plotting ways to return the favor. That is exactly what they were counting on. They wanted you stuck in the same dark space they operated in, because as long as you stayed there, they still had influence over you. Forgiveness wasn't about giving them peace. It was about reclaiming your own. The power in how you forgave is that it wasn't the soft, timid version most people imagine. It was strategic, deliberate, and unshakable. You weren't excusing what they did, and you weren't pretending it didn't matter. You fully acknowledged it and still refuse to let it have the final say over your life. That is where the weapon aspect comes in. By letting go, you cut the last thread connecting you to their control. You denied them the satisfaction of seeing you twisted inside, consumed by the same bitterness that runs through them. That kind of forgiveness is destabilizing for people like them, because it defuses the fight they had prepared for. They expected ways no human could orchestrate. The doors they thought would open for them suddenly slammed shut. The opportunities they counted on vanish. The alliances they thought were unshakable collapse overnight. Because when you disrupt a divine design, you aren't just stepping on toes. You are entering a judgment. You've probably noticed that some of the fallout didn't even require your involvement. You didn't have to go out and make them pay. The dismantling began on its own because the very hand they used to try to dismantle you are the same ones that unknowingly set their own destruction in motion. That is why your survival is more than resilience. It is proof you are still standing. Not because you dodged the blow, but because your position was fortified by something they could not touch. And through every day you continue to move forward, you aren't just proving them wrong. You are confirming to everyone watching that when a life is aligned with divine order, no betrayal, no plot, and no act of malice can overturn what has already been written. In trying to eliminate you, they didn't just defy you, they defied heaven. And that is a battle they will never win. 12thly, you became the mirror they cannot bear to look into. You didn't have to confront them with angry words, public denunciations, or constant reminders of what they did. Your mere presence became the confrontation. Every time they see you alive, stable, even thriving, it sends a jolt through their conscience. They cannot fully numb themselves. You became the mirror they cannot stand to look into, because you reflect the one thing they are trying to escape, the truth. It's not just about the betrayal itself. It's about the fact that you survived it in a way they never anticipated. In their mind, the story was supposed to end with you broken, bitter, and buried in shame. They built their entire play assuming you would not get back up. But here you are, walking, smiling, existing without the weight they try to place on you. And that is what destroys them, because as long as you stand, their narrative collapses. Your survival is not silent to them. It is deafening. Every accomplishment you make, every day you move forward, every moment you carry yourself with dignity is another crack in the wall they built to protect their ego. It forces them to remember the lengths they went to in order to break you, and how none of it was enough. You are the living proof that their best shot still failed, and they cannot ignore it. You don't need to remind them what they did. They replay it every time you enter a room, every time your name is mentioned, and every time they realize you have healed without their apology. It is a kind of torment they cannot escape, for you have become an unavoidable witness to their character. They may try to avoid you physically, but they cannot avoid the reality you represent, that they have been exposed and that you have endured. They may try to project confidence or pretend they have moved on, but deep down they know the score. You didn't just survive their betrayal. You transformed it into an unshakable testimony. And whether they admit it or not, you have become the living, breathing proof that what they did says far more about them than it could ever say about you. That is why seeing you destabilizes them. You are the proof they can never rewrite. 13thly, the consequences have proven one thing. You are not just hard to kill. You are impossible to replace. The consequences of what they did haven't just left scars. They have left a gaping hole. They assumed that once you were gone, people would quickly adapt, that someone else could step into your place, and that life would continue uninterrupted. They were wrong. Your absence hasn't just been noticed. It has screamed. It has left the entire environment unbalanced, as if a foundation had been ripped out from under it. The truth is your roles, whether in relationships, family, community, or work, weren't just about what you did. They were about who you were. You weren't just filling a slot. You were sustaining an entire atmosphere. Your presence had a stabilizing effect, a subtle influence people didn't fully recognize until it was gone. Now, they see that the peace, the productivity, and even the sense of direction they took for granted had your fingerprints all over it. They thought your removal would be their moment to shine, but instead, it exposed the fact that their light was never their own. It was borrowed from the environment you sustained. Without you, cracks began to appear. Tensions grew. The chemistry changed. It became clear that they hadn't built anything up. They had only dismantled. And now, people don't just miss you. They are reevaluating everything they believed about those who pushed you out. What makes this even more brutal for them is that your absence hasn't just hurt on a personal level. It has made them look small. Their grand plan to eliminate you didn't just fail to make them look better. It made them look useless. People have started to ask, asterisk, why did they do that? Things were better before. Asterisk, those questions sting because they expose the truth. You were the glue, the silent anchor. Now, no matter what they try to build in your place, it rings hollow. It's like replacing a rare gem with a plastic replica. The shape might be similar, but the substance isn't there. And every attempt to pretend otherwise only reminds everyone that the real loss wasn't the position, the connection, or the project. The real loss was you. And the one thing the consequences have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt is that although you were betrayed, rejected, or underestimated, you were never replaceable. Not then, not now, not ever. In the end, this wasn't just a story about betrayal. It became undeniable proof that you were built for something they could neither create nor destroy. Every attempt to diminish you only revealed your depth. Every plot to erase you only made your presence more unforgettable. They sought to humiliate you, but they ended up documenting their own weakness for the whole world to see. Resistance. They could push against a back-and-forth battle that would have kept you tied to them indefinitely. Instead, you stepped completely out of the arena, leaving them swinging in air. It's hard to keep playing the victor when your target no longer even grants you the recognition of being a worthy opponent. And here's the part they will never admit out loud. Your forgiveness exposed their smallness. It showed everyone that they were still clinging, still holding grudges, still trying to settle scores while you had already moved on to bigger and better things. It left them looking petty, bitter, and trapped in a cycle they can't escape. Because your forgiveness is about making sure they don't drag you down with them. It is a clean cut that allows you to keep your soul intact, your mind clear, and your path open. And in doing that, you didn't just win the battle. You ended the entire war on your own terms. Ninthly, you were their darkest secret long before the betrayal. Long before they made their move, you were already living rent-free in the darkest corners of their mind. They may have smiled to your face, applauded your victories, and played the role of supporter. But beneath it all, resentment was quietly taking root. It wasn't sudden, and it wasn't random. It was a slow burn, a simmering hostility they masked with politeness, waiting for the right moment to turn it into an open attack. What they never understood is that you had already sensed it. You may not have called it out, but you felt the shift in energy. You noticed the way their compliments carried a hidden sting, the way they were always present when things went wrong, but strangely absent when things went well. You could smell the rot before it broke through, and while they thought they were fooling you, you were simply watching it all unfold, waiting for your moment. By the time the betrayal happened, it didn't hit you with the shock they hoped for. They wanted it to feel like a sudden earthquake. But for you, it was more like watching a storm you had seen forming on the horizon for years finally arrive. The difference is that you had already built a shelter while they thought you would be caught in the open. That is what destabilizes them the most. The realization that you had seen through them long before they showed their true face. It means their big reveal wasn't a masterstroke. It was just a confirmation of what you already knew. And in a way, it steals the power they thought they held. Because their betrayal didn't rewrite your view of them. It simply proved it. Their greatest mistake was underestimating your discernment. They assumed that because you didn't confront them directly, you were blind. But there's a difference between being unaware and choosing not to expose something before the time is right. You let them believe they had the advantage, all while knowing their bitterness was eating them alive. When the truth finally erupted, it didn't just reveal what they had done. It revealed who they had always been. And the worst part for them is knowing that you had seen it long before they thought you did. Tenthly, your pain forced them to reevaluate their own capacity to betray. What happened to you didn't just spark outrage. It forced people into uncomfortable self-reflection. It's easy to watch a betrayal from afar and label the betrayer a monster, shaking your head and reassuring yourself that you would never do something like that. But when the person who commits it is someone you know, someone you've laughed with, worked with, or even admired, the conversation changes. Suddenly, it's not just about what that person did. It's about what anyone is capable of under the right mix of jealousy, desperation, or pride. Your pain became a mirror. People couldn't watch it unfold without asking themselves difficult questions. Asterisk, what would it take for me to cross that line? Have I ever justified something I knew was wrong because it suited me? Am I capable of causing that kind of damage if my ego was threatened? Asterisk. This is a level of self-analysis most people avoid because it means confronting the darker parts of themselves they prefer to believe don't exist. And it wasn't just theoretical for them. Your situation made it real. They saw how quickly loyalty could dissolve, how affection could turn to hostility, and how someone could pretend to care while secretly planning harm. The betrayal was no longer just a story. It was a living example that closeness to someone doesn't guarantee the purity of their intentions. It shook people because it meant they had to admit they weren't as good at reading others or themselves as they thought. Some walked away from your ordeal with a deeper respect for the weight of their own choices. They understood that every decision to act with integrity, even when provoked, is exactly that, a decision. Others were unsettled because they recognized pieces of the betrayer in themselves. They saw how small grudges left unchecked could grow into something far more destructive. That is the hidden power of what you went through. It didn't just reveal who they were. It revealed the thin line between morality and selfishness in everyone who watched. You turned casual observers into people who had to examine their own shadows. And whether they admit or not, your pain gave them a measuring stick of themselves, a silent challenge to never let envy, anger, or pride push them to become the very thing they despise. 11thly, they didn't just betray you. They declared war on the divine order over your life. What they did to you went far beyond personal betrayal. It wasn't just about a broken agreement, a sabotage opportunity, or a stab in the back from someone close. It was a direct attack on something much greater. The calling, the purpose on your life. Your journey isn't random. It is marked. Your assignment isn't self-proclaimed. It is signed by heaven. This means the attack wasn't simply against you as a person. It was an act of defiance against the one who sent you. The reason this betrayal shook the atmosphere so profoundly is that it wasn't just a violation of trust. It was an attempt to interfere with divine order. They weren't just trying to stop you. They were trying to disrupt the fulfillment of a mission that was never under their control. And here's the dangerous part. When someone does that, they aren't fighting a person. They are fighting the source behind that person. That is why the consequences often unfold in. You walk through fire without losing your form. You endured storms that should have broken you, only to emerge sharper, clearer, and more dangerous to the lies that tried to define you. And now, your very existence has become the kind of reminder they wish they could erase. Proof that not only did you survive, but you became stronger because of it. The irony is that what they intended for your end became the most captivating chapter of your story. And now, the lesson is clear for all who are watching. When the wrong people try to bury you, they are only planting you in soil that makes your roots grow deeper. You didn't just outlast them, you outshone them. And that light will never go out. If this message has touched you deeply and you felt every word, don't keep it to yourself. Press that subscribe button so you never miss another truth like this. like this video if it spoke to your spirit. Leave a comment to share your own thoughts or testimony, and share with someone who needs a reminder of their own unshakable strength. This community grows when we rise together. So let's make sure no chosen one walks this journey alone. Your support keeps the fire burning. God bless you.